Good morning, everyone. Today is our last day of our community forum. We are so excited about the culmination of our students. I want to call here to the stage Rachel Brandt, Megan Yost, and Anh Vu. Please give them a hand. They will present their final presentation on their projects. You have been working hard and dedicated throughout 2 years. And it's my pleasure to be moderating the panel for you. I will just repeat the instructions. Each of you will have 12 minutes to present. But before, there will be an introduction of 5 minutes by all of you. And then each of you have 12 minutes, and then 3 minutes for Q&A, individual. And then after the three complete that, then there will be 10 minutes for the whole panel questions. The panel is called Fostering Community Transitions Through Behavioral Change and Social Impacts. Let's give them a round of applause.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here today. We're so thrilled to be able to share this with you. My name is Rachel Brand, and Ricardo already did us the honor of introducing our title today.
My name is Anh Vu.
And I am Megan Yost. Our actions, whether they be here in the Gunnison Basin, next door in San Miguel County, or even miles across the ocean in Vietnam, are seeking to address the challenges faced by climate change and to mitigate these challenges through sustainable solutions.
Community transition is an important aspect of sustainability. Without transition, new programs, new initiatives, and new ideas cannot be given shape through time in the communities in which we live. Where does that transition begin, and how do you shape that beginning?
Behavioral changes is one way to foster transition and encourage those changes we want to see in our community. These behavioral changes can be small and simple, such as recycling our plastics, composting our food waste, or conserving water. And altogether, they build the foundation for lasting social impacts.
Social impacts refers to consequences that any actions, activities, policies, or projects has on various aspects of people's life. These impacts affect individuals, groups, communities, or even social structures. Social impacts are multifaceted and can manifest in changes. These three interconnected themes that we have just shared represent the foundation of our approach toward climate change mitigation. To explore one of these key pillars, I'll now hand over to Rachel, who will present her work on community transition.
Thank you. Hello. Like I said, my name is Rachel Brand, and I'm a Sustainable and Resilient Communities Track student here in the MEM. For the duration of my project, I was very lucky to work out of San Miguel County in Telluride. My project title is Aligning Local Sustainability Points of View, Management, Development, and Assessment for Compost Initiatives in San Miguel County. So for my presentation today, I will be giving you an overview of the project background and a little bit of the why of compost. I will then be going over the grant development that I worked on throughout my time as part of the project and the results of that. I will then be giving a little bit of an overview of the challenges and successes I faced along the way. And then I will conclude and sort of provide some of the next steps and give an overview of the state of compost now at the end of the grant program. So with that, let's transition into the project background. San Miguel County is host to a population of 8,000 residents and 200,000 tourists in any given year. The east end of this county, due to its box canyon geography, over here imports and exports basically every resource and waste. With many agricultural businesses and commercial businesses that create green and food waste, The county identified an incredible opportunity to decrease the export of waste and increase circularity in the county by providing a compost initiative. San Miguel County has a lot of agricultural land and forest land, all of which could benefit from compost as an additive in the soil. So with this recognition of need, San Miguel County, along with many motivated partners in the county, applied for the United States Department of Agriculture Composting and Food Waste Reduction Grant. This grant was awarded in 2023, had 10 internal grant partners and 2 goals, a 2-year goal of 10% food and green waste reduction, and a 10-year goal of 75% food and green waste reduction. So you may be thinking, okay, well, why did San Miguel County choose compost? Well, compost is one of the many incredible avenues for promoting community resilience and mitigating climate change. When compost is an additive in soil, it can reduce soil erosion, increase water retention, and improve soil tilth, which is soil suitability for plants. It can also reduce stormwater runoff, which is helpful with pollution sources. Stormwater runoff contributes to that. It can also help sequester carbon and mitigate methane release, and both of those things contribute to climate change. So I will say it is important to recognize that reduction of waste and reuse is the most important part of the waste management hierarchy, but we have to eat, so there will be food waste, and so why not put that back into the soil? So I want to give a little bit of an overview of the grant development that I was fortunate to do while part of this project. I worked on it for 2 years, and this happened through a variety of avenues, and I have 4 main categories here. In the first year of the grant program for a required 2- and 10-year grant report, as well as a grant narrative that was being written at the time, I had the opportunity to do a lot of write-ups surrounding compost and had the opportunity to do a lot of shareholder engagement in that first year. Sorry, my mouth is so dry. One of those write-ups that I did, for example, was surrounding shareholder meetings that were held by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. In fall of 2023, they were aiming to change Section 14 of their waste regulations. Section 14 deals with composting. The reason for this change is that small to mid-sized scale composting facilities were finding it inaccessible to become a compost facility because of various barriers. So the CDPHE was doing an overview and looking to see what they could change to make it easier for composting facilities. This was important for San Miguel County to understand because of the amount of waste that San Miguel County creates would be perfect for a mid-sized composting facility. And so if they were ever to do that, that's where they could go. In the fall of 2024, I had the opportunity to have a bit more of a role in the grant program by providing a proposal to become the assistant grant manager. My community sponsor gained a lot more responsibility in the county at the time, and as such, there was a need for administrative help. So I wrote that proposal myself and outlined all of my role and responsibilities, and these went from things like attending meetings on behalf of the county, working to collect invoices, and working to ensure that all the grant partners felt they had what they needed to finish the last months of work within the grant. In the last year, and for most of my larger deliverables, I created a best practices and permitting questionnaire, as well as a grant critique with further recommendations. For the best practices and permitting questionnaire, this was made through lots of research and discussion and observation, and it's basically a guide for anybody at the county and all the questions they might need to ask in order to build a compost facility from the ground up. For the grant critique and recommendations with guidance from my sponsor, we looked at all failures and successes within the grant program and looked to see what lessons we could learn for what could have changed in the last 2 years to have better pushed the grant forward and hit those initial goals. So instead of just talking about what I've been doing, I wanted to show some of the things I created. What you're looking at here is a write-up about grant indicators. We were asked to select some so that the grant program would have measurable data, and this was by the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovation Production. The selection of these indicators was actually done with fellow student Henry Williams, and I went on to do the subsequent write-up and the table, and these are for all grant partners to use. So while we had many categories to choose from, the categories we felt most appropriate were economic impact and resilience, community engagement, food resource management, conservation and climate, and training and education. Some of the indicators that are under these categories go from pounds of compost created through the program to number of individuals trained on education of composting and food waste reduction, and then also like new initiatives created throughout the program. So for example, Town of Telluride and Town of Mountain Village created incentive programs for individuals looking to start composting, and so those would count as two. This is the assistant grant manager proposal that I got to write. It was a valuable exercise in looking at contracting within the county and how to get yourself involved with that. So I drafted my own role here, and so this is sort of twofold, in administrative assistance and communication. So like I said, I had responsibilities from doing check-ins, collecting invoices, and then working to go to meetings for the county, and also providing follow-ups with my community sponsor about everything that's happened. And what you're seeing here is the best practices and permitting questionnaire. This questionnaire goes through all the phases basically of starting a compost facility. So if the county were in the future to start that facility and buy land and be like, okay, what do we need to do? This has questions that would help answer anything if they were to reach out to other facilities and ask like, oh, what do you do? How does this work for you? So it goes from like starting out to permitting questions, operational questions, financial, composting itself, and as well as some of the grants. And I had the opportunity to talk with Julie Mock at Mountain Elements Compost in Salida, who provided so much insight about many of these questions that I've written and helped flesh it out even further. I faced a lot of challenges, but also a lot of successes along the way. For me, the biggest hurdle, I think, of the grant program, and for me personally, was communication and staff turnover. At the very onset of the program, leadership changed hands several times, and I think this led to changing grant objectives, a change of my own project goals, and also a change in leadership styles. And I think it also contributed to a lack of, shared vision overall within the grant program. Now, not to say that people aren't passionate in San Miguel County about composting. People are like elated about composting in San Miguel County. I think it just, that passion went in so many different avenues instead of being a super united front. Another of these challenges, which was more personally for me, but rather a success of the grant program overall, was shareholder engagement. When I came onto this project, I was an exceedingly new, fresh face in town. I'd basically almost never been to Telluride, except for once or twice. And so I had to really overly advocate for myself to be involved in the program and in project stuff. And then sometimes I felt that I did not hear about things. So that was a bit of a personal challenge for me, but also a bit of a lesson. But for the grant program overall, shareholder engagement was a huge success. There were so many incredible outreach events and things like that. One of my favorite ones was actually held in Ridgeway. It was a soil health event held by Shamrock Soil Conservation District, where I got to see Ricardo, who is our local biochar expert, which is also a soil amendment. For successes in general, I learned so much about grant management throughout this time, from narrative writing and report writing, reimbursements, invoices, everything that has to do with grants. And I also gained an incredible operational understanding of municipal and county level work, which I think will be so important for my career moving forward. So for next steps, what does compost look like at the end of the grant program now? So there's been start of service through Bruin waste management at the commercial level, with more of a start in the residential. The biggest win here, though, is in the last 2 months, they got a contract with Telluride High School. So there's a lot of food waste there that's going to be taken through composting from that. And as I said, so many successful outreach events by partners. I think that San Diego County has lots of room to grow, particularly in policy and infrastructure, and I think this is really unique for them. And I think that there's going to be so much ability to promote composting throughout the county as time moves on. As for my particular role in the grant, we filed for a year-long grant extension, and I may be able to continue my role as assistant grant manager by working to provide some of the recommendations in my grant critique to push for that infrastructure and policy change. So I just want to thank everybody throughout my time here, especially USDA, TI, Western, and San Diego County for providing funding for this project. I really want to give a huge shout out to Jared Biggs at San Diego County for teaching me so much throughout the time that he's been here with the project. All of my incredible educators here, my amazing mentors, Dominique and Jillian, for meeting me at every step and every emotion through the way. Chris Mettery and Evan Iverson for their passion at the beginning of the project. My peers here, my parents for supporting every transition no matter where I move, my friends in Telluride, Jim and Donna Caruso for housing me and feeding me the last 2 years, and of course my partner Jack for everything. Thank you.
Congratulations, Rachel. There are QR codes there all around the theater. Please send your questions through the Slido app. And we already have some questions for you.
Of course.
And the first one says like, what steps did you and your partners take to ensure successful longevity of your work?
Well, like I said, there's so much passion in the community for composting. And so I think that even particularly without next steps of longevity, I think that the compost program would continue because of that passion. And there's already been like festival composting going on for a really long time. But part of that is the grant extension and really working to push for infrastructure. Enclosures are really important in Telluride for composting because of bears. And so when like an HOA or part of the community wants to compost and they don't have an enclosure, it's a bit of a barrier. So in the year-long grant extension, if we use some of that leftover grant funding, we could provide that so the program could continue on.
Great, thank you. And we have more questions. What are the main failures and critiques that you learned from?
I think that the main thing that I learned from was with the staff turnover, there was a lot of like extreme passion in the many avenues, as I said. And so there were a lot of ideas going at different speeds in different directions. And I think that if we had been able to pull it together in a different way, we could have gotten a little bit further than we are now. And I feel that right now the grant is headed in a really great direction as people have really started to come together in the last month and a half, all the grant partners. So I really learned just about like how important it is to like almost overly communicate with everyone and really understand that we're all on the same footing.
Great learning. Could you explain more about your survey design? Was there an IRB process? Were you conducting surveys at your outreach events?
I did not do any of the survey creation at the outreach events. That was more in fellow student Henry Williams' wheelhouse. He's a big marketing guy. Is this maybe in reference to my questionnaire about the composting like best practices? If that, I did not do an IRB process. That was mostly a questionnaire made out of research, observation, and discussion with individuals who are extremely knowledgeable about composting.
Excellent. And we have one more question. What are the economic challenges that you see for composting in Telluride and San Miguel County?
San Diego County is really unique in that, so Telluride is the county seat, and it's a very high altitude. It's also very cold. And so one of the financial things is right now, all of the compost is being hauled out to Delta Compost, which is 90 miles away. And so I think that at the end of the day, the biggest financial barrier is going to be hauling and the start of service for lots of individuals, because Not everybody has the money in town who live already like in affordable housing to start doing that kind of sustainability work. Not everybody has accessibility to that.
Yes. And I want to ask the audience to give an applause to Rachel. Yes. And we will continue more questions in the panel.
I would like to hand it off now to Megan Yost, who is going to give an incredible overview of her work with behavioral change.
Welcome, Megan. An applause for her.
Hello, thank you for being here. My name is Megan Yost, and today I'm going to talk to you about a really unique opportunity I had to offer a textile care and garment repair course through Western Center for Learning and Innovation. But before we get started, I have a question for you all. How many of you have a beloved garment, whether it be a wardrobe staple or a family heirloom, sitting at home in a pile in need of repair? Maybe it needs a button, a new zipper, it's got a rip or a stain. Well, as I look around the room, just know, as I can see from up here, that you are not alone in this, and it is a small step that we can take to minimize the impacts of textile waste. And so we're going to explore how this course decided to tackle the challenges of garment impacts on the environment head on. So as we know, today on our little pocket computers, we have so much access to information, and social media is really driving this narrative of overconsumption and the instant ability to buy new clothing items and have them show up on our doorstep in 2 days. Historically, this is not how clothing and textiles have played a role in the lives of humans. And as we look forward towards 2023, if we don't take steps to address the impacts created in the production process, in the emissions generated by the textile and clothing industry, which currently accounts for 8 to 10% of global emissions annually, things are not looking good. So this course was designed to help individuals understand how they can get involved in their communities and on their own. So Western Center for Learning and Innovation seeks to build up lifelong learning. And the objectives of this course through this program were to minimize consumption and encourage course participants to invest their time in learning instead of purchasing new items. It also aimed to reuse clothing and give it new life once it's reached the end of its lifespan in the current state that the garment or textile exists. And it was an opportunity to build community with individuals who have a shared interest. In this case, doing good for the environment and learning a new practical skill. Practical skills and lifelong learning, excuse me, hold value for all of our time. And the Center for Learning and Innovation seeks to instill these values in members here in the Gunnison Valley. And this goes beyond as well. You can apply this to your community, but lifelong learning comes in many forms, whether that be continuing education, or again, taking the opportunity to expose yourself to a new topic and learn something that you've never experienced before is a great way to get involved. And the CLI was the home for this opportunity. A few terms that'll be important here as we begin to unpack what this class and course actually look like are textile related here. And first up, we have mending, which is a more general and broad term for garment repair. And then it also takes on a meaning for a specific form of garment repair. Like, take a moment to think about your favorite hiking trail, you're wearing your favorite hiking pants, but unfortunately you trip and fall and rip up the knee of that pair of pants. If you were to take another piece of fabric and slap it on top of the rip of the knee on your pants and then sew it down, that is a mend. And then we have darning, which is a little bit of an offshoot of mending. And there are two real main ways of achieving this effect, either a woven darn or a knit or Swiss style darn. And the thing about darning is you're creating new fabric on the fabric itself. And so you can see here in the bottom left picture, an example of a woven darn typically works well on woven fabrics, and a knit style darn here, which works well with knit garments to kind of retain the stretch of that fabric and textile itself. So the course structure for the garment repair and textile repair class. It took place over 10 weeks with 10 course participants meeting 5 times for hands-on skill building workshops. We started at the very beginning at workshop number 1 with hand sewing and learning how to anchor our thread to our fabric. From here, you can attach a button if that's the repair that's needed, or we continued forth and we learned how to hand sew the back stitch, which is the foundation of hand sewing. And participants were able to craft a little drawstring pouch that they were able to tuck their sewing notions and sewing kits into for the duration of the course in workshop series. In workshop number 2, we dove deeper into the actual skill building and hands-on practice of mending and darning. In workshop number 3, we started exploring creative ways to give new life to items that have reached the end of their lifespan in the state that they exist. So that's upcycling, which I'm now realizing I forgot to mention on the first slide, but that applies to more than just textiles and garments too. And then in workshop number 4, we tackled machine sewing and the foundations of what it's like to sew with a machine. Using the back stitch to lock your threads and keep them from slipping out. And then adjusting your tension and stitch length and stitch width to account for the type of material you're using and the outcomes and desired results from a project itself. And then we wrapped it all up with a gallery walk where participants were able to share with each other the projects that they were working on over the course of this class and series and their heart and their why behind they chose the items they did to repair and to create. And so the power of DIY really encourages circularity, especially in the textile and clothing industry, where we do have this current consume and throw away culture so prevalently. Taking the time to invest ourselves into our garments ensures that we are going to take better care of them and give them the life that they deserve, rather than just saying, it's got to stain, it's got to go. And so that was one of the really cool things that we explored over the course of this workshop series. We also got to explore the really cool impacts that upcycling have, and I'll share an example with you in just a moment. And you know, they extend beyond clothing too. So if you're kind of sitting here mulling in your mind about maybe an item you have at home that can be reused in a new way, maybe find a project for it later today. And then handmade creations continue to combat the narrative of fast fashion and the constant consuming that we have in this society we currently live in with all the information at our fingertips. And so slow fashion, slow made. Again, we are investing our time and we are going to take better care of something that we have put ourselves into. Now, one of our course participants this semester found that she had some ripped pillowcases and bed sheets, and she wanted to do something about that. So her vision in mind was to turn them into placemats. And so we did a little bit of math after we cut off the unusable parts of the fabric, and we found how we could maximize the usable material available to create proportionally sized placemats. And then we got her working with the sewing machine to start assembling and putting these placemats together. And that impact even rippled out in her own family. She had some family in town, and her nephew was curious as to what she was up to, and he decided to jump in and help sew one of the placemats with his aunt, which is so cool to see how that behavioral change is rippling as an effect and moving its way forward. Another course participant had a beloved patchwork tote bag that she had been using for many years, but the patchwork layer on the front side of her tote bag was starting to pull away. So anytime she thought she was putting something in her tote bag, turns out it wasn't landing in the bag, but it was just slipping and falling onto the floor. So it was really cool to equip her with the skills and the knowledge to repair and to get those layers of fabric sandwiched back together so that she could continue using the tote bag that she already had and that she already loved so dearly. And she was so excited to know that she could keep that in her wardrobe and to be able to rotate through and use again. She also shared a project in which she made from scratch. She was able to thrift some really cool fabric from 6 Points, one of the thrift stores here in Gunnison, and she made a nice little tote bag, and she was so proud of herself and so excited to put her belongings inside and use it to carry them to the river this summer. And so it was just really cool to see how these small behavior change, these participants who took the time to learn and invest themselves in learning a practical skill that is going to allow them to minimize their impact on the environment by taking action themselves and saying, hey, I am going to repair my garments and take care of them longer and give them the longest lifespan I possibly can before throwing them away. So before I give my thank yous, I'd encourage you all to consider how you can minimize your textile and clothing impact. There are opportunities as simple as picking up a sewing kit at Walmart or a local craft store and looking up a tutorial on YouTube. Or maybe your community has classes available through your local library or nearby universities or college. If you're here in the Gunnison Valley and interested in this going forward, I would encourage you to keep an eye on the Center for Learning and Innovations course offerings, as we are hoping to offer this textile care and garment repair course again. And now I would like to thank my family and friends. I wouldn't be here without you cheering me on the hardest days. And a huge and special shout out to my grandma Yost for teaching me to knit and to sew. My grandma Maloney, thank you for teaching me to crochet. And to Michelle, thank you for teaching me to embroider. Without you sharing your knowledge, welcoming my curiosities and teaching me your craft, quite literally, this project would not be possible today. So thank you. It truly means a lot. I would like to thank Shelley Jansen and the Center for Learning and Innovation for taking this idea and welcoming it with open arms and being able to share how we can make an impact positively here in the Gunnison Valley. And with that, I would also like to thank my mentors, Jillian and Dr. Kate Clark, for their support and guidance all throughout my time in the program. And thank you to my peers and friends and the Western Colorado University community. This has been such an amazing place to work and live and to explore my passions. So thank you.
Congratulations, Megan. Big applause from the audience. And there are questions here, but before I want to ask you a question. Have you integrated art in your work as an environmentalist?
Yes, I have. There's actually a denim jacket that belonged to my grandpa Yost, that then was passed down to my dad, and it lived with our camping gear. Every time we would go camping as a kid, Dad would pull out his camping jacket, his denim camping jacket, and I received it next, and I'm currently in the process of embroidering my favorite sunset I've ever gotten to experience in one of the most amazing outdoor spaces I've ever gotten to spend time working and living in. And I'm hoping that this jacket in particular can initiate a conversation that people might wonder, hey, what's this all about? And how we can start looking at the overlaps of recreation, creativity, and environmental stewardship, and how they all come together, and how art can be a form of advocating for the positive changes we want to see in the world and for our environment.
Absolutely, a way of advocating. Congratulations. And there are questions here. Megan, you mentioned the upcycled placemats. And what other sources did you use for practice materials for the class?
Yeah, so over my years of learning, I've acquired materials myself, and some of them are just not getting used. And rather than them just sitting and not being used, I donated some of the materials that I know that I just wasn't going to work with, and allowed them to be available for course participants to use, because if they can have access to material to learn, the more that they are going to be able to practice these skills and create a lasting impact. So I had no problem sharing and paying forward the materials I knew were not going to get used.
What is your favorite type of mending?
Ooh, knitting is my first and true love. Hands down, you will find me with a project in my hands, whether it be in the campsite or watching a movie or whatnot. But knitting, I'm very partial towards knitting, but they all work together. Once you've, as they say in the fiber arts world, once you know one, you get suckered into them all. And so that has resulted in my current learning of how to spin fiber into yarn. So that is my next step in the learning process.
Congratulations. There are more questions. We will go in the PR panel. Big applause for Megan, please. Yes.
Thank you. And now I'd like you all to hear from Aine and her amazing project that was designed to support women and encourage the adoption of new technologies.
Welcome, Aine.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ang, and I'm very excited to be here in person to present to you about my MEM research with the title Social Impact of New Technology Adoption on Women. And of course, I hope that you were able to grab a hold of Vietnamese tea bag on your way in. If you have not, please grab one with you on your way during the break. Tea is not just an important part of Vietnamese culture, but it's also a symbol of women's invisible labor and hard work, which is at the center of my research paper. So before I start my presentation, I would like for you to think of some of the questions that I have on the board right here. So for every 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds of green tea products, how long do you think it takes to produce? How much fresh green tea leaves it needs to be harvested? How much firewood is needed? And how much can the farmers actually sell it for? So just take a moment just to think about the numbers. And here's the numbers from my research that might surprise some of you if you are not very familiar with green tea processing. Traditionally, using firewood, it would take approximately, or actually sometimes more than 10 hours. 5 kilograms of fresh green tea leaves need to be harvested. 8 kilograms of firewood and only can be sold for $14. When switching to a new technology, all the hard work and the fuel can be reduced while the selling price actually increased. So today I will share with you how important new technology adoption is and how it is supporting women in rural area to actually transform their lives and where challenges remain. My research investigates in the context of Vietnamese culture and green tea industry, how can the adoption of biomass gasification foster behavioral change, improve quality of life, and empower women who are often perceived as passive recipients into active leaders. So in order to answer my question, actually, I use a mixed method approach, combining desk research as well as interviews. I conducted 50 in-depth interviews with 25 people who are traditional users who are still using firewood, and the other 25 who have completely transitioned to a new technology called VCBG. I will explain it a little bit. And then I also conduct 4 focus group discussions, allowing participants to share their collective experiences, social norms, gender dynamics more openly. And finally, using thematic coding to analyze my data. So a little bit about my study area. It was conducted in Đại Từ district, Thái Nguyên province, which is in the north of Vietnam, where tea is the most important agriculture product. This area produced high quality tea, where traditionally was powered by wood stoves, and women play a very central role in tea processing. So talking about tea processing, if you are not very familiar, it includes 7 very basic steps, starting from harvesting all the way to packaging. Harvesting would take the entire morning, and the other 6 steps would take from the afternoon all the way to midnight. Sometimes can take like around until like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., very much depending on the amount of tea that they can be harvested. And the women are the ones that involved in all of these 7 steps. So they are the ones that are experiencing or being exposed to physical strains, injuries, and any smoke-related health problems. A little bit about the technology that is at the center of my research, the volumetric continuous biomass gasification, or VCBG for short. This technology converts any agricultural or forestry residues, actually even in your backyards, anything with branches, rice husk, corn cob, cassava, into clean and usable gas. It also produces much higher, actually, energy efficiency and significantly lower smoke emissions. So this technology replaces the three most important steps in the tea processing, which are withering, drying, and sanding, which was traditionally used by firewood. A little bit of context to help you better understanding about my research, that we need to understand a little bit more about why the women are still facing challenges within the Vietnamese cultural foundations. Vietnamese society is heavily influenced by Confucianism, which historically actually values male authority, assigning women to domestic roles, so limiting them to the private spheres with tasks such as housework, taking care of children, taking care of elderlies, and the list goes on. It's also prioritized family duties over personal ambitions. But however, recently in the past decade, Vietnam has made significant progress with a lot of legal commitment, as well as national programs and plans. Notably, Project 8, which was, well, it is still led and implemented by Vietnam Women Union to ensure and to advance women and gender equality in all aspects of women's life. My research also looked at several empowerment theories, particularly Kabir, the framework which distinguishes between resources, agency, and achievements, or Zimmerman, that he emphasizes that empowerment is gaining masteries over one's life. So all of these theories was utilized actually to investigate and to analyze whether the adoption of biomass gasification, in this case, a VCBG, actually has any impacts on like greater income, reduced workload, better health, or more decision making at individual levels. So here is some of my findings regarding workload. VCBG adoption actually save women 2 to 4 hours every day, so freeing them to any rest or like activities or any hobbies that they have always wanted to do. But with the better and more efficient energy, they actually produce better and higher quality. So actually it increase the selling price between $1 to $2 for every kilogram. And it significantly improved income as well. VCBG users actually earns 3 times more than traditional users. And I have found that higher income actually strengthens resilience to economic shocks such as unpredictable weather or storms that destroys the yield that year, or any other climate change impacts. Visually, as you can see on the right here, VCBG household is a lot more cleaner and more organized comparing to the traditional household, which is a picture on the left. Traditional wood stoves actually expose women to a lot of smoke hazardous environment and also forcing women to work in extreme conditions. Getting bitten by ants or insects while collecting firewood or using firewood was very common, or they have to constantly removing and feeding their firewood into the stove to have the correct temperature during the tea processing. So this leaves them no time to rest during the tea processing. When switching to VCBG, all of that burdens actually lessen, especially with the injuries. As you can see on the chart up there, injuries such as red eyes, coughing, or minor burn was significantly less to only 12%, while the traditional users still, 100% of them still experience those kinds of injuries. Regarding decision-making, as I've just shared, that VCBG technology has actually improved income, reduced workload, and actually improved the health outcome. However, its impact on decision-making was quite complex. As you can see here on the chart, actually women's engagement in all stages of tea processing, as well as participating in like pricing decision has already exist before the transition. And after the transition, interestingly enough, they even perceived that there was more limitation for them. They can feel that there is more limitation in the community activity as well as the final decision making. So we can see that despite all the initiatives and all the implementations that Vietnam is trying to progress forward. But we can see the implementation was very uneven. That is such a barrier, and especially in rural area where traditional norms still persist, even among the those that benefiting from new energy. So you can see here from some of the sharing, the women are still sharing that they are very much dependent on their husband's opinion. They have limited education, and at times they are not even allowed to voice their own opinions even. So my conclusion is that obviously you can see that new technology improves women's lives in various aspects, but true empowerment has not automatically followed, and mainly just due to persistent cultural norms. In order to have a just and inclusive transition, there must be combination of technical innovation with deeper social transformation. So this ensures that women are not only just workers, but leaders in their communities. And of course, supports or subsidies from the government or any domestics or international organization will be very crucial in this transition. So with this, of course, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Western with the support throughout my whole MEM program with various fellowships, the Haley Grant by the Haley family. Dr. Ricardo, your exceptional mentorship has been very invaluable throughout my MEM research as well as my professional development. And the whole MEM community as well. Lindsay, thank you so much for your help with all the travel arrangements, making my coming here very much possible. I would also like to thank my company, EBG, the one I'm currently work with, Mr. Long, my manager, who continue to encourage me and actually challenge me to grow. Ms. Tao, for her insightful reviews and also her support, Ms. Thuy, for her coordination, and all the MEM, all the EBG team in general. So thank you so much for listening.
Congratulations, Ain. Great project. And we have some questions, and we are very curious to know. And the first one says, how easy has it been to integrate this new VCBG technology in Vietnam?
Actually, this is not actually a very new project. We received a grant from the EU 4 years ago. So it started 4 years ago. At the beginning, it was very difficult. I wasn't in the company back then, but I knew of the experience that people doesn't found that there is a need for transition. They have been very much used to traditional wood stove, and they can like simply just collect the wood in the backyard. So there was no point for them to buy a new technology. So yeah, it was challenging at first, for sure.
Of course. And what is the largest barrier to implement this technology for women in rural areas?
Sorry.
What is the largest barrier to implementing this technology for women in rural areas?
That's a very great question. So I think to increase this, so before we, as I just shared that we do have a grant. So all this technology was given for free. However, now that the grant has already completed, now that in order for the women to actually use this VCBG, they have to purchase it. And VCBG can be quite expensive. It is between $140 to $200. Right now, traditional women only earn $195. So it's actually, some of them might not even afford VCBG. So the financial constraints will be the biggest. Sure.
And related also to that is, how can consumers purchasing tea, how can they support this transition and or women in this industry?
Yeah, I think, of course, consumers also always look for buying cheaper tea. But definitely if the consumers are a lot more aware of the tea process and the hard work that the women actually have to put into it, hopefully that they can a lot more willing to purchase higher quality where actually women can benefit from it a lot more. So yeah, hopefully more communications out there would actually help.
Sure. Yeah. And is there any chance of continuing improvement of VCBG efficiency?
Yes, that is definitely yes. So the engineering team in my company is constantly, actually even daily testing this, so they will continue to improve. Right now, the efficiency I can tell you is at 60%. We are hoping it to be 80% by at the end of the year. So they are working very hard.
Let's give AIM a big applause for the project. Congratulations. Keep the microphone. And now you have QR code signs there, and please send your questions for the panel. We have 10 minutes for you for the panel, and these will be questions for all of you. Well, while questions arise here, I would like to ask you, what are your next steps for each of you in your career? Following your project, or what is your next plan and the steps?
Yeah, I can answer first. So currently, I'm still working for EVG as a project manager. So after graduation, I will actually go back. We are having some ongoing carbon credit projects, which is very exciting, very challenging. So yeah, I'll continue my work.
I am excited to stay here in the Gunnison Valley, working with Western Colorado University, switching gears a little bit and working with student affairs, but being here allows me to also work with the CLI going forward to continue offering this textile care and garment repair class. So I'm really excited about that.
There's potential for me to continue in my role with the compost grant if the extension is filed and accepted and everything. And so I may do that throughout the summer. I'm actively looking for jobs. It's just difficult right now with everything at the federal level. So there's just a lot of competition. But I did get a scholarship to attend Water Education Colorado's water fluency course in the next 6 months. And so I really look forward to that as I'm really interested in water, as well as having enjoyed my time working with San Miguel County. So,
of course, great. Great for everyone. And a question for the group. What was the biggest challenge you faced during your project? Who wants to start? Yes.
I touched on this a little bit, but just being like a fresh face in the community, Telluride's really small. Like Telluride itself, maybe like 2,000, 3,000 people, with lots of rotating cast members, really truly from the ski resort. So really integrating myself into the community was a bit of a challenge. I had to really work hard to meet everybody and, be considered for things. So that was part of one of the challenge.
I'm working full time, so definitely this is my own project. So I usually just work on my own project at night. So I feel like there was no sleep, first of all. And second of all, I work on two languages, Vietnamese and English, because there was a lot of translation going on. So that was a little bit tough.
The largest or most challenging component to my project in seeking to create an inclusive class and course offering through the CLI, I did my best to make sure everyone had access to this opportunity. But one of the things that actually slipped my mind, given the fact that I've worked a little bit with some early childhood education, was childcare for some of the participants who were parenting kids that wanted to learn these skills, but didn't necessarily always have access to childcare, which has helped me understand that going forward, I need to consider how to find ways to make sure childcare is available, or that there are alternative options for participants to learn and also still take care of their kids.
Great, thank you. And what is the most unexpected success you experienced during your project? It's a question for all. The most unexpected success you experienced.
That was a really hard question, but I think I think one of the most successful aspect of my research is that I got to work with a lot of local people, and some of my question was really sensitive, relating to the cultural norm, especially gender dynamics in a culture where traditions still persist. And I was really glad to know that, like, during my focus group discussions, the women were so open. They're open about all their hard work, about what challenges they are so much facing, how much limitations they have. And yeah, I learned a lot from them, actually.
I think one of my most unexpected successes, and I have to give a little bit of credit to Dominique for pointing this out, was with a lot of the staff turnover in the grant program, that being on the project as a graduate student and being there throughout the entirety of the 2 years meant that I was a steady face and had seen all the facets of the program. And so I think that probably would be one of my unexpected successes, because I don't think I had realized that. So
My most unexpected success was the number of course participants I had registered for the course. At the beginning of the week that the registration for courses was closing, I had 2 course participants registered, and I needed a minimum of 5 for the course to run. And by the end of the week, I had 10 course participants registered. So it went from 2 to 10, and watching it all happen was just, there was one moment where I was like, hey, I'm gonna have to come up with the next plan of action for my project, to watching it happen like and shift within a matter of hours was absolutely exciting and very unexpected.
Great successes. And this question is for Ain. What is the potential for this technology and approach to diffuse throughout Southeast Asia?
So this technology actually can be applicable at individual household business like green tea or even industrial scales. So we are doing that. So definitely we are working, but the green tea processing have been more successful. But yeah, it will become, for example, for other, we are working on boilers as well. So it can be much bigger scales.
Thank you. Megan, where did you conduct your workshops?
I conducted my workshops in Library 101, which I have come to find out is not the most conducive space as I initially thought, but that it was okay. The space worked, but going forward, I think I would like a room with a little bit more flexible lighting options.
Yes. Ain's project clearly empowers women. Megan and Rachel, are there parallel changes and opportunities for women in the US through composting or sewing?
if you're passionate about composting and you want to do it at different levels, as a woman, you can. There's so much knowledge out there, and there's also women running composting facilities now. I talked about Julie Mock at Mountain Elements Compost. She co-founded that organization, and it has really taken off in the last, like, I don't know, what, 5 years. And she expressed a lot of success and gratitude for that. And so I think there's so many opportunities. I think it's just merely wanting to get involved and putting yourself out there.
I think typically there's been a gravitation towards these crafts for women, and historically that has been kind of the structure and setup as society has evolved, and women traditionally had some more of those home care, homemaking roles, and these were included in that. Towards now, we have the opportunity to explore what our passions are. And so it's this interesting overlap of how do we empower women, but also not make it feel like we're setting them back in time to traditional hidden like homemaking requirements expected by their peers or their communities or their spouses, but rather how can we reframe these crafts and arts and use them as a vessel for advocacy and a form of personal expression rather than something we have to owe to someone else.
Thank you. And last question for the three of you. If you could leave us with one key takeaway message, what message would you leave us with?
It starts small, it starts with you. Every individual action and choice we make triggers a chain reaction of positivity. You never know when someone's watching you take out your compost, recycle your plastics, take on repairing a garment, and you never know when a conversation can make its way higher up to people who have the power to enact and implement policies that take these changes even further. So don't be discouraged to take action. Your small actions matter.
Wow, that was very good. So my takeaway is that I think that just really focusing on energy in general, energy transition has been very male dominant, and especially just focusing so much on how to increase efficiency, but definitely it's such a complex issues that we need to actually just, yeah, handle it much better, as we can see that from the case that I have just presented.
Good things take time. And I think it's really important to understand that things are not always going to go exactly how you expect them to when they're presented to you in a certain way. I also think that it takes so many people to do any kind of project, and these people need to be both idealists and realists and passionate and have many different kinds of skills, whether they be marketing and giving such a good outlook on everything, to being the realist and going, okay, this isn't working. What do we need to change? It takes everybody. So
We will take this takeaways with us, and let's give them a big applause. We are so honored to have you here. Me, as Director of Sustainable Resilient Communities and Global Sustainability Tracks, I am so hopeful because of you. Thank you. We will have 10 minutes.